Welcome back to those rolling back in. Some groups will take every second of the 60-second warning. Welcome back. How was your conversation?
Oh, it was really interesting. Really good.
Good, good, awesome. We'll ask as folks roll back in for highlights. So if someone from your group wants to share a couple highlights, that'd be great. Welcome back, everyone.
Bless you.
Hello and welcome back. We have everyone rolling back in. I hope you enjoyed that initial conversation, opportunity to connect, think about what's surprising in AI and how you're envisioning it will impact your work as an innovator. Just as we transition, I do want to hear from you all. So be thinking about, we'll ask you to share a highlighter of what was discussed in your group in terms of what you found surprising. So be thinking about that. And while you think about that, I want to take a moment. Alex, I'm so sorry I didn't acknowledge you when we got started. Alex is a newcomer to AMI. He's very interested in joining our community, someone who knows Rob Brodnick very well. Alex, would you just say a word? I wanted to acknowledge and welcome you as a newcomer.
Thank you for, I think I was happy not to be acknowledged in the first round, so I'm pleased to be here. I recently retired from a long career in academics and moved to Ohio from Boston, and I'm doing some consulting now and having a lot of fun with it, and I have done a lot of work with Rob and David.
Hey, Alex.
There he is. Over the years, and I'm very interested and very happy to be here. And
Awesome.
thanks for all your information, Danielle.
Absolutely, awesome, and welcome. And I know you were with MGH, right? And leading some innovation work there. Wonderful, wonderful. Well, welcome. We're happy to have you with us. So, folks, just as we transition here, and before we jump into our positive turbulence segment with Eric, what was coming up in your breakouts? What struck you as particularly surprising, or any highlights that folks would be willing to share? You could raise your hand or virtual hand, hop off mute, and share a headline of what was coming up. We'd love to hear from the groups briefly. And if you want to type into chat with what you were hearing or what struck you, you can do that as well. But would someone offer? Sure, Dave.
I shared with the group over at a Thanksgiving dinner. I sat down and was speaking to one of my nieces who runs a school for autistic children and kids with special needs. And she was telling me, beyond asking her use of AI, beyond creating lesson plans and that, which is very, very important, very productive and efficient, she was talking about using it for communication with the students. And some of them that were pretty far along the spectrum, that had, severe behavioral issues or communication issues that other methods have not proved, too effective. She's able to put into AI the child's profile, their autistic condition, personal things like, Ellis likes teddy bears or the color pink or whatever. And AI creates a story customized for that child to get across the lesson on how to overcome or to adapt this behavioral issue. And she said it has been very, very successful. And, it's just communication, with a child in that condition. I mean, something like that is just, it's like miraculous.
Yeah,
what
it's a real breakthrough in terms of our ability to reach and educate. That's wonderful. Other surprising applications or ways you're envisioning AI will impact your life as an innovator? What else was coming up in your groups you'd be willing to share?
I'll jump in real quick. So our group, a few of us, myself and Michael, were saying that we found that it was really helpful with assisting us. And mine was for a personal situation with a family member where it helped draft a first letter to a family member I was having difficulties with. And it was an idea that a friend said, why don't you put it into AI and see what it comes up with? And it was so helpful to help me start a conversation. Of course, I rewrote it, but it gave me a draft, right? And Michael also said in his nonprofit that it helped him as well, like just almost like an assistant, like he needed to start a project and he put some things in and it actually crafted something very useful to him. But Denny, I don't want to call it Denny, but he did he's in music, and he brought up something that I thought is worth sharing, if you don't mind, Denny, sharing what you told us.
Oh man, you're putting me on the spot.
I'm sorry, but it was
Yeah.
good. It's since you're in the music business.
Yeah. Well, it's the opposite side of all the benefits. I really enjoyed hearing, what Dave was talking about. See, it's kind of the opposite side of AI, and the challenges of getting this right. So I just briefly talked about how, the AI in music right now is having this, unfortunate impact of displacing the creative work of globally known, critically acclaimed, award-winning artists, right? And the way our digital systems are set up and automated, those who are looking to profit from, say, the automation of our digital systems are looking to use AI to replace music, in my case, that's being, created by, real people with a heartbeat and a soul, with something that's computer generated, and they don't have to pay royalties on, and they don't have to pay the creators on, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of the darker side of the use of this, but is a big concern right now in the creative communities about how to regulate, how to regulate this. So we had just a brief conversation about that.
Yeah. Yeah, isn't it interesting that ChatGPT, though, and I'm glad for this, pointed me all to human musicians with a heartbeat and a soul for what to listen to when exploring AI. That's a good thing. We're not being pointed to, we're being pointed to musicians there.
Did you specify jazz, Danielle, when you asked?
No, I didn't classify jazz. It gave me 2 or 3 artists in each genre, so I just picked jazz because we have such a strong connection to jazz. And for those newer to our community, Denny, who is the CEO of a jazz record label, hosted us out in LA, and we explored the world of jazz and improv and how it relates to creativity and innovation. So I chose jazz because of the connection we have, but many genres were offered. Steve, you were going to offer something.
Yeah, real quick, just to build on this topic, because I talked about it briefly in our group, the area of music, and the fact that from a technology side, though, it's also amazing. I mean, I think we've all heard about, the latest Beatle record that came out last month, and taking John Lennon's voice off a dirty tape and using AI to literally just harness that voice and then integrate it into a whole multi-tracked record was absolutely amazing. So from that standpoint, it worked out wonderfully.
I thank you. And I'm seeing in the chat here acknowledgement, Spencer, of the perspective you were bringing in your group. I wondered if you might say a few words about things you were highlighting in your group.
Yeah, I think it was just trying to kind of bridge the gap a little bit and we talked a little bit about demystifying what AI is and how it's kind of really just a lot of data points. I'd say it's similar to the internet age in that it's just a lot of index data points that are now being coded into reasoning models. And that blows a lot of people's minds because it's, I think, scaled to a point where it's almost as thoughtful as a human. And that we really are just an amalgamation of experiences and data points on our own, and that's what gives us our uniqueness. But we kind of see this AI that has an amalgamation of a lot of our data points and access to the internet now. So we kind of went over some of that and some use cases and what you can do and how you browse with it and things like that. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Spencer.
It is interesting actually, because in our group we commented on how ChatGPT and Claude AI had different personalities.
Well, and I wasn't surprised, Fabienne, that you preferred Claude.
Yes.
What was coming up there, Fabienne? Anything else you wanted to say? I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I was, this is what I was saying. building on what Spencer said, that they connect the dots in their own way, and this is the uniqueness of the algorithm, I guess. And so the only thing they cannot weave now is feelings. They can fake them, but they cannot feel them because they have no bodies. So this is the only hope we still have, I guess.
Gets back to heart and soul.
Daria, I wonder if I might ask you to come off mute and say a little bit more about shaping the culture. What was on your mind?
Yeah, so I kind of mentioned I'm still sorting like my own like personal feelings about like AI and its uses, but I think like on a larger scale, like we're not gonna avoid it, you know. It's here to stay, and it's gonna like keep becoming probably a more prominent part of everyone's lives. But if we can kind of have like conversations like we are here, or you know, in our like schools or wherever we are, we can kind of like stay ahead of it a little bit. So like kind of keep it as like a tool rather than like something that is sort of controlling us, so to speak.
Sure. So how do we shape that culture?
Yeah, because if we can kind of make the culture around, like build a culture around it as a tool or something to help us, then we can kind of like shape how people are using it and how people think about it.
Thank you. Greg, I saw your hand up. Did you want to offer something, a highlight from your discussion?
Yeah, I just remembered I get a journal called Foreign Affairs that are kind of thought leaders. And they had one essay where the guy said, we have to regulate this across the nations of the world. And we have no history of ever doing that. There's another article that said, because China's using AI, we can't put on the brakes. We have to use it and stay ahead of China. So it seems like there's this incredible fear of maybe slowing down, thinking through the consequences, and yet incredible pressure that we have to keep up with some of our adversaries. And that concerns me a little bit.
So many dynamics to consider and explore. And I'm going to build from Susanna, where you kicked us off talking about using AI as a first draft, and suggest that we as innovators are you know, on a springboard now with AI into a conversation about what's possible. And just really looking forward to how we can explore, how we can start with that first draft mentality of how AI serves, and think through what's possible together. So I'm going to transition us from our conversation from the breakouts. I want to move now to be able to introduce you all to my dear friend and colleague of many years, Eric Noyes. Eric is someone I've known since the mid-90s. He is a dear friend and colleague whom I worked with at my first job at an innovation consulting firm called Ideascope Associates in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Back in the day, we shared an office together. He has since then gone on in his career as an innovator to be a professor at Babson College School of Entrepreneurship, where he's had terrific success. I'm so proud of you, Eric. Just named one of the top 50 business professors in the country. So congratulations. I'm really proud, and I know how engaging you are with students, and it doesn't surprise me at all the amazing impact that you're having. Eric also co-founded The Generator, which is an interdisciplinary AI lab that looks at advances in AI in the world of entrepreneurship and innovation. So Eric, it's just a real pleasure for me to introduce you to this community. We've been around for 40 years and always kind of exploring, pioneering topics that impact innovation, and you're just the right person to hold this conversation for us. So thank you so much for being with us. And I hope you'll kick off both by sharing your story of how you became so interested in AI and think about it, and also introducing the students from Babson who are here with us.
Yeah, thank you so much, Danielle. If I can share my screen and then. Everybody see okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So I just want to start off by thanking Danielle Kainer and also Stan Griskevich. I mean, any friends of these two individuals are friends of mine. And it's just wonderful to be with you here today. And then also want to recognize Spencer Carnes and Buddy Leong, and we'll have a second to introduce them. We'll have a bit to introduce them in just a little bit. We have a lot to cover today. There's a lot I want to cover in this conversation, and I want to just kind of jump right in to set the stage. Just very briefly, I'm coming from Babson College. Many of you may know Babson College, some of you may not. But basically, we are a business school very much focused on entrepreneurship and innovation. I'm coming from the world's largest entrepreneurship department. We have venture capitalists, private equity people, family business, franchising, small business, kind of everything under the sun. And I've been there for 17 years. I teach all types of entrepreneurship courses. And just this fall taught a new course called Entrepreneurial Opportunities in AI that Spencer and Buddy were both in. Just by virtue of, just to show a little bit of background, part of my career was some really fun time with Danielle working in corporate innovation, or in my world, what we call corporate entrepreneurship, working with companies like BMW, Nokia, Motorola, New Balance. And we all know, right, the world's largest companies have the challenge of reinventing themselves on an ongoing basis through innovation. And some companies manage to accomplish this and really impress us. And others fail pretty spectacularly at this challenge. So what I'd like to do today, and I do want us to get into a discussion and interaction mode pretty quickly. I'm going to ask for a little bit of liberty just to get us out of harbor, and then let's take off the gloves and kind of get into conversations. I do have a couple brief breakouts planned as part of this roughly hour that we have, but here's the goal. I basically want us in this session to explore ways AI can support innovation leaders, i.e. you, and different innovation processes. And specifically, I want to share with you some AI experimentation that I've been doing in the following areas that definitely pertain to innovation. So everything from prototyping entrepreneurial ideas, right, which is concept development, but then also visualization, to certainly customer insight seeking. I mean, so much of entrepreneurship and innovation is about need finding. It's about trying to get a line of sight on unmet needs. And then also industry foresight, futurism, right? Trying to look further or broader down the road than anybody else does. And then certainly idea generation. So those are places that I would like to go with you today. I want to be very clear from the outset just how I want to handle this is I want to talk about AI as a tool. I really want to just kind of demystify things. I want to strip, so much of the artifice away. I want to talk about AI as a tool and not any type of a revelation. I want to get kind of pretty like block and tackle with this in this interaction. And again, my goal is to have conversations. So before I jump in, I do want to introduce just two excellent Babson students that I've so enjoyed working with this semester, and then Buddy, in your case, we have a prior life together. I'm wondering, Spencer and Buddy, can you each take a second and can you please share just who you are and maybe just a bit more about your interest in AI?
Sure. My name is Buddy. I'm a junior at Babson. What I'm really interested in AI is how it's lowering the barrier to entry and really across the board. It's enabling people without previous technical experience or experience in many things to increase their knowledge on various topics and utilize these tools in order to create new things.
Thanks, Buddy. Spencer?
Yeah. Hey guys, I'm Spencer. I'm a second year at Babson. I similarly to Buddy think that the democratization of technology and kind of the lowering of barriers to a lot of things like, let's say, code or using softwares that take years to learn and things like that is extremely important. especially as we go into a time where a lot of third world countries are getting access to more and more technology. And those people have so much innovation that they're putting out and so many ideas. And that's really where the power of AI comes into play. Um, and yeah, I personally have a big focus in energy. I think that energy and hopefully getting more energy from solar farms in space is going to be the next steps for the planet. And utilizing AI in all of those areas is really important to me. So, yeah.
And thank you, Spencer. And I should mention for context, Spencer was one of two students that just a few weeks ago organized this wonderful event at Babson called How I Use AI. And it was, I think the subtitle, Spencer, was what? Students' most creative real-time uses of AI. We had about 70 individuals there. And frankly, we had a little side deal where it was about students speaking, I'll say at, because it's appropriate, students speaking at faculty to understand broader kind of creative applications and uses of AI, because this may shock you, but not all faculty are excited about kind of the AI revolution. Don't let this leave this small group of 40 people. There's some faculty at Babson that actually reach out to IT on a weekly basis and just ask if IT could turn off AI. Like if you could just go like down in the utility room and press the off button. So you know, higher ed is an industry, and so we have to let's just say kind of drive and push in that space too. I just want to make sure settings are correct here, because I want to be able to see everyone's face when we kind of move through this to have kind of a good interaction. I'll tell you, I'm not so multimodal that I can also simultaneously do the chat. But I want to just make sure something, because I don't want to, I was just seeing my screen and I want to be able to see people's faces at the same time. So just give me 1 second. I apologize.
In the meantime, I've also dropped a link to that event. It is an hour and 37. There's a lot of students with insane applications from finance to marketing to art. So if any of you guys want to go and look at that, we haven't gotten a chance to clean up the audio with AI yet, but it's still definitely, you can listen to it and watch it, and it's pretty engaging. So if any of you want to check that out, I put the link in the chat.
Thanks so much for sharing that, Spencer. I don't know why, Danielle, but I'm having a viewing issue on my end where I can see my slides, but I can't see everyone as I see my slides. And so I'm trying to quickly address that so that I can actually have.
Are your slides in Google, or did you figure it out?
Yeah, we're good. We're all good.
Okay.
Just one more second, please. Okay, great. Life just got so much better. Okay, so I want to start off by just kind of painting the picture of some views of the AI moment that we're in. And I mean, literally, we could talk about this for a solid week if we just strapped ourselves into our chairs, but I just want to kind of give some stylistic interpretations of the AI moment we're in, if you will. So there's research that shows that AI is going to contribute, you know, trillions of dollars to the global economy by 2030. GDP growth equal to the size of China and India combined. That's significant because of one set of technologies. And then I think we all are also following beyond just kind of in terms of improvements in global productivity, we're on the verge of potentially seeing just a very significant disruption in terms of global employment. And I have a colleague that says something I really appreciate. It's not AI that is going to take your job. It's actually going to be, a brilliant person with an AI that will kind of disrupt the industry. But just want to recognize that there are, you know, many massive kind of global forces going on here. One thing that I think is really fascinating is this AlphaFold project by DeepMind. If you haven't heard of it yet, AlphaFold is a lab that was started at Oxford University. Now it's, DeepMind, now it's part of Google. And basically what they did was they decoded the structure of all 200 million known proteins to humankind. In the past, we knew the structure of 170,000. Each individual protein took many PhDs and in cases, millions of dollars. So 170,000 in all of humankind. And then DeepMind decoded 200 million probabilistically just in the course of a couple of years. AI is driving just exponential changes in terms of science and discovery. This seems particularly relevant to this group. OpenAI and GPT-4 is showing some really surprising results on classic creativity assessments. I haven't had a chance yet to really go into the published articles on this yet, but this article claims that GPT-4 is scoring in the top % on creativity assessments. Let's even say it's just the top 10%, right? It's this interesting world of the average employee or the average leader or the average student has a superpower in terms of kind of creative multiplication. That is definitely a change of history. Just a couple more things here. There's some really interesting research, much of it out of MIT, looking at the use of generative artificial intelligence in terms of employee effectiveness, employee satisfaction, and obviously worker productivity. And I've kind of highlighted, I'll be quiet for 20 seconds, kind of the yellow highlighted area in this article that kind of gets to the punch. I think a key point is that AI tools are a big leveling phenomena. They can lift up kind of the bottom performers. They can increase efficiency, increase productivity. I love this particular article that just came out a couple months ago. Basically, they did a controlled study where they had doctors versus chatbots respond to individuals posting medical issues on social media. And the headline is, no offense to doctors, is that people overwhelmingly prefer chatbots, and they find chatbots more empathetic than doctors. So chatbots have a better bedside manner than doctors. I think the average doctor wrote 50 words, the average chatbot 252 words, and I think it was something on order of 79% people preferred kind of interacting with a chatbot around their medical questions. So again, this is just treetops kind of across a few spaces. And then lastly, I think something we just have to acknowledge, obviously, is that AI poses real risks to people and economies and societies. And I think, we have about, 50 minutes left. I mean, I think each of these kind of areas is a place we could kind of dive deep under the hood. I think we'll have facets of that in our conversations today. But it also needs kind of real time to get deeper beyond just kind of general doomsday scenarios to actually unpack assumptions and so forth. Okay. So any kind of comments so far? I'm just trying to set the mood and kind of get us out of harbor. If not, I'm going to take the boat a little further out of harbor.
Got a thumbs up.
Thumbs up.
Okay, let's go a little further. So I want to just get a little more specific, and I want to talk about generative AI, which is a form of AI, right? And I happen to have the good fortune 5 years ago to do an MIT program on machine learning about generative AI. I've been researching this area for the past 5 years. You may have possibly heard about generative adversarial networks, or GANs. Been kind of working with this for a long time now, but I wanted to just give you some kind of reasonably rigorous definitions of what generative AI is. But I think of it fundamentally as it's around generation. It's around kind of creating, right? It's about leveraging data to create new data. And to kind of bring this down to the ground, I asked ChatGPT, we're on a first name basis, by the way. Right now, I just call it Chatty. I'm not going to say GPT 25 times a day. I encourage you to say Chatty too. But in simpler terms, this is how ChatGPT describes what generative AI or what it enables. And I use this, frankly, when I meet with administrators or people in advancement at Babson that are kind of new to just this whole field. But what I want to show you, because I think it actually makes it more concrete, and it's important to kind of get it in there theoretically and conceptually. I just want to show you this website, which you can go visit right now, called thispersondoesnotexist.com. It's a great illustration of generative AI. And I think, you know, the web address says it all. This person does not exist. This is an output of an AI that was trained on 60,000 faces on Flickr. And it's literally built up at the hair level. This person doesn't exist. This person doesn't exist. And that person, and this person. And what this shows you is not only kind of just the striking kind of fundamentally pattern recognition capabilities of an AI model, but the flip side of pattern recognition is generation, right? Once I can patternize it, well, then I can almost like turn the TV around and then I can create based on that pattern understanding. And that's what you're seeing with this person does not exist. I'm not going to get into it. This is in a research presentation, but I've actually used this kind of core capability in face rendering. That person does not exist. Actually, I'll point out one thing too, is there's a really nuanced understanding. For instance, if someone has gray hair, they're more likely to have darkened or yellow teeth, right? There's lots of fine grain kind of connections kind of going in here into the rendering. So anyway, so I've used this kind of capability to do some research around essentially the non-diversity of Fortune 500 company executive leadership. And so what I did was I trained a model on the top management team and board of directors on Fortune 500 companies. And I'm only showing you 9 faces here on the right for each synthetic face on the left. But what I did was I gathered all of the faces for the top management team and the board of directors, and I used that to train and then create an average synthetic face representing top leadership for each of the 500 companies. So here you can see Visa and Uber and so forth. Once you can do that, you can do other interesting things. I actually then trained a model to look at the average face by sector, by economic sector within the Fortune 500. So here's a view of 4 of the economic sectors, right? Retailing, transportation, and so forth. And it feels to me like a pattern kind of starts to emerge once you play with the data. I'm not good at math, but I'm going to still kind of keep pushing on this in my research. So anyway, this is leveraging, a generative face model, and ultimately there are 512 latent dimensions in StyleGAN 3 that are giving me this capability. So this is just kind of a theoretical jumping off point for where we're going. Okay, so why is this so interesting to innovation leaders and entrepreneurs and educators? Well, there's so many reasons. And I'm at a school focused on entrepreneurship. The main thing I would call out is that generative AI enables entrepreneurs to generate, explore, and test new disruptive ideas in this amazing kind of mixed media, mixed model way. We can literally explore and render ideas. We can explore and render ideas faster than we've ever been able to. So jumping ahead, I mean, if you think about AI as a canvas in a sense, right? All of these images that I'm showing you here are entirely synthetic, right? All of us can design architecture this afternoon over a glass of red wine, right? This example on the bottom left, that's actually a model where you can sketch something and then have it rendered as a photograph. That's something we're doing and working on in the lab I'm creating. All of these images are entirely synthetic, right? I've created many of these. I've found some of these on the internet. You can be a designer, right? You can design clothing this afternoon. And then lastly, I think the implications in terms of product and service and experience and system design are really interesting. To be clear, I don't think there's a big market for like a watermelon chair, but like you can quickly see one, right? And embody that concept if you want to. I think the image on the top left, the prompt was a pretentious design store that sells women's designer shoes and vertically grown hydroponic broccoli. So you can think about retail environments, right? I mean, it's literally working at kind of all levels of analysis. Bottom center, those are handbags designed through kind of concept prompts. Some of the images here actually have to do more with generative engineering. And then lastly, or second to last, is this issue of coding. Not only does AI, generative AI, enable coders, existing trained coders, to code faster and better, but it enables people that don't know how to code to code. There's a software called processing. I've tried 4 times now unsuccessfully to get myself up and kind of flying the plane. With ChatGPT, now I'm in the cockpit and I am a coder. I was not a coder 2 months ago. And that's a really disruptive thing in terms of innovation. And the last thing I want to share with you, there's certainly interesting opportunities, AI for social entrepreneurship, for positive social impact. And with that said, I actually want to share a video with you about 5 minutes of Saul Khan of Khan Academy. Just give me 1 second, please. All right.
You have a lot of takers for the watermelon chair.
Okay, yeah, I'm taking pre-orders on the watermelon chair. All right, I think, are we good if I press start?
Yep, let's see if we hear. Good.
So anyone who's been paying attention for the last few months has been seeing headlines like this, especially in education. The thesis has been students are going to be using ChatGPT and other forms of AI to cheat, do their assignments, they're not going to learn, and it's going to completely undermine education as we know it. Now, what I'm going to argue today is not only are there ways to mitigate all of that, if we put the right guardrails, we do the right things, we can mitigate it, but I think we're at the cusp of using AI for probably the biggest positive transformation that education has ever seen. And the way we're going to do that is by giving every student on the planet an artificially intelligent but amazing personal tutor, and we're going to give every teacher on the planet an amazing artificially intelligent teaching assistant. And just to appreciate how big of a deal it would be to give everyone a personal tutor, I show you this clip from Benjamin Bloom's 1984 2 Sigma study, or he called it the 2 Sigma problem. The 2 Sigma comes from 2 standard deviations, sigma the symbol for standard deviation, and he had good data that showed that, look, a normal distribution, that's the one that you see in the traditional bell curve right in the middle, that's how the world kind of sorts itself out, that if you were to give personal one-to-one tutoring for students, that you can actually get a distribution that looks like that right. It says tutorial one-to-one with the asterisk, like that right distribution, a 2 standard deviation improvement. Just to put that in plain language, that could take your average student and turn them into an exceptional student. It can take your below average student and turn them into an above average student. Now, the reason why he framed it as a problem was he said, well, this is all good, but how do you actually scale group instruction this way? How do you actually give it to everyone in an economic way? What I'm about to show you is, I think, the first moves towards doing that. Obviously, we've been trying to approximate it in some way at Khan Academy for over a decade now, but I think we're at the cusp of accelerating it dramatically. I'm going to show you the early stages of what our AI, which we call Khanmigo, what it can now do, and maybe a little bit of where it is actually going. So this right over here is a traditional exercise that you or many of your children might have seen on Khan Academy. But what's new is that little bot thing at the right. And we'll start by seeing one of the very important safeguards, which is the conversation is recorded and viewable by your teacher. It's moderated actually by a second AI. And also, it does not tell you the answer. It is not a cheating tool. Notice, when the student says, tell me the answer, it says, I'm your tutor. What do you think is the next step for solving the problem? Now, if the student makes a mistake, and this will surprise people who think large language models are not good at mathematics, notice not only does it notice the mistake, it asks the student to explain their reasoning, but it's actually doing what I would say not just even an average tutor would do, but an excellent tutor would do. It's actually it's able to divine what is probably the misconception in that student's mind, that they probably didn't use the distributive properly. Remember, we need to.
So I'm going to pause it there. I encourage you to look at this maybe after the session. But basically, so Sal Khan's vision is that every student in the world has a personalized tutor, regardless of their available means, on their shoulder, right? And that's a really interesting, really interesting disruptive moment in higher education, actually in all types of education. Any comments people have, any reactions to kind of where we are so far?
We'll talk about democratization of education and the opportunity to create inclusion for all. This is pretty amazing. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, no, thank you. And it's interesting. I can tell you that just, I mean, when I kind of learned about this and started to more deeply understand large language models and this kind of Sal Khan's vision, that's an interesting, that's an interesting question. I mean, Babson College, where I am, I would argue that we have a responsibility, right, to train models that make kind of entrepreneurship education democratized, right, that make it accessible to the many versus just the few.
I think it's, by the way, I want to say one thing, like if this happened when the pandemic broke out, because I saw so many kids that even, I just think how useful this would have been to teachers during COVID times. So it gets me very excited when I think about, I had a tutor for my son, but a lot of families can't afford anything per hour, whether it's $10 or 20 or 30. So this is, levels the playing field, which is amazing.
And also, Eric, you made me think about something that I'd like you to think about. We talk about regulating AI, and we also talk about training AI. But you're essentially presenting something here that talks about our responsibility as educators to create education models that will almost obviate the need for regulation, because we'll create smart systems for people who can get smart and access information themselves instead of trying to put handcuffs on kids.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, the whole AI governance question is too big for us to handle in this Zoom, right? But I mean, in terms of, I think more on track with the conversation, it's like, we need to scale our best radiologists. We need to scale our best childhood educators. We need to scale, the promise is scale, right? With so many implications. So what I want to do is, just so that I'm kind of reasonably on the path that I promised Danielle I would be on, is I do want to now turn this now to this kind of conversation about innovation. And this language may actually sound funny to you. Pick your language: corporate innovation, corporate venturing, strategic innovation. In my world, we actually oftentimes refer to this as corporate entrepreneurship, right? It's literally existing organizations starting new ventures or new organizations. And I thought it might be interesting, just as a motivational piece here. Back when Danielle and I were working together, I was working with Nokia. And in 2000, if you remember, Nokia was literally sitting on the top of the world. I think of it as like General Motors. In 1955, General Motors was the Fortune 1 company. It was the company with all of the talent, all of the resources, right? And it was just the envy of the industry. And that was very much Nokia in terms of 2000. And I think we know, Nokia still very much exists, but I think we know that in 2007, right, kind of the iPhone came out and basically just ate Nokia's lunch. I actually have this exact phone. It's the Nokia Communicator 9000. If I were in my office, I would show it to you. Really amazing product. Battery life of about a half an hour, very functional. You could send and receive faxes, which was very practical. I'm not sure if everybody's picking up on my bad sense of humor, but and the reason I bring this up is because really what I want to talk about, if we're going to talk about innovation, let's talk about it with a capital I, is I want to talk about layers of corporate innovation, and specifically The highest, you could think of it kind of like a pyramid. I mean, the bottom is new product and service innovation, right? Innovative companies create new products and new services. That's what they do. The higher up level is creating, well, whole new businesses. And then really kind of the peak of the pyramid is something that we call strategic renewal, or, what I put down here, the transformation of organizations through renewal of the key ideas on which they are built. These are like the big, like, what industry are we in? What's our future? What's our growth horizon kind of questions. And I'd like to get at some of that. By the way, in terms of Nokia, I brought that up for a reason. Does anybody know what Nokia was before it was a telecommunications company? Most people don't know, and it's fascinating. Anybody? Don't look online.
No, I thought it was fax. Anyway, but it's.
Didn't they make like paper towels or something like that?
Oh, David, you're my ringer. Yes. Nokia was a pulp paper products company. They made paper towels and toilet paper and like ream paper. And when I was working with them and when I was working with Danielle back in 2000, I'm in Helsinki. We go away to have sauna, and I'm in this old, 200-year-old sauna establishment. And I go in the basement, and there's a Nokia paper towel dispenser with the identical logo that you see right here. You want to talk about strategic renewal. I mean, literally selling entirely out of that business to move into new growth spaces. So I wanted to kind of put that forth as a bit of motivation as we push ahead. That phone's no longer made, by the way. Okay, so let's try to get this down to the ground here, and then please, after I share the slide, don't be polite, jump in. How can AI support innovation leaders? And I want to argue that there are so many ways, but I really just want to feature or focus on 4 key ways today, and we're going to do a bit of a dive into each area. And these areas are developing customer insights. I mean, what do innovators do? Is they find unmet needs. They search hungrily, they mine for, they sift, they clarify, they polish unmet needs. Moving down, well, if they have a really compelling insight about a need, is they generate ideas and they think about innovations that can attack or that can service that need. And then if I move top right, generating industry foresight. AI is an interesting tool to think about the future of technology and market trends and their interrelationships. You can attack it combinatorially, you can attack it visually. There's so many interesting areas there. And then lastly, I would argue this is the most important piece of the other 4 of all of them, is organizational alignment. Everyone on this Zoom knows that in innovation, ideas are important, but it's fundamentally about team and group and organizational alignment that gets innovation done, right? There's one thing to have a vision of the future. It's another thing to align hundreds or thousands of people around that vision, or growth engines or growth businesses. This is the terrain I want to cover. And I do want to just briefly acknowledge a gentleman named Bob Johnston, who is the founder of the firm that Danielle and I work for. He would frame things this way, and I actually think it's a convenient way to kind of have this conversation about AI. Does anybody want to jump in?
I can just tell you this is incredibly topical for us, like front and center to exactly what we're doing and right at this moment.
I'll take that. Anybody else?
I was with Bob on Tuesday, and I'm sure he would love it, Eric.
Oh, okay. Tell Bob I said hi.
Eric, could you say a little bit more about the elements of the organizational alignment?
Well, so we used to have this saying, right, at the firm Danielle and I worked with, people support what they help to create. And so it really emphasizes kind of a social process of people creating together and developing ideas together, exploring ideas together, socializing those ideas, right? Looking at the future together. When we talk, alignment is a fancy word for getting on the same page. And I think we've all seen in our professional lives that the best ideas rarely win, right? Ideas don't carry the day in innovation. It's the leaders that are skilled at getting people on the same page. That's what I mean by organizational alignment. And AI is a tool that can actually help get teams, hundreds or thousands of people on the same page with respect to innovation. Hopefully that clarifies.
Thank you.
So let me push ahead in kind of this top left quarter, so I can actually kind of show some experimentation with AI tools, and so get a little bit more into probing and defining customers' unmet needs. And specifically, I want to show you the power of, it could be ChatGPT or it could be Claude, to summarize data or to summarize feedback. And I'm going to give you kind of a stylized example here, and I think that's okay. I'm going to actually use AI to summarize and interpret customer feedback for British Airways, okay? And I think, I don't need to motivate the flying experience and the good, bad, and the ugly we all experience, right, when we fly to the other side of the world. But let's just say we're trying to kind of look at a mass of data British Airways has to hunt for unmet needs, okay? So I want to introduce you to, if you haven't already met it, this is a tool called Claude, or I like the woman's pronunciation much better, Claude. This is Claude. And this is a tool by Anthropic. It's a fascinating company. And so what I did is I actually had a 30,000 row Excel file of passenger feedback from recent flights. Literally just a kind of a survey of thousands of passengers that have recently flown British Airways, not just complaints, the good, the bad, everything, all in between. And actually, at the time when I did this about a month ago, I could only upload about, I think, 2,000 rows. Now what's called a context window has grown, and I could get all 30,000 rows in there. So literally kind of, I could just literally shovel all that data in there. But for my 2,000 rows, I put in that spreadsheet, and I said, do passengers generally enjoy flying British Airways? There's probably a better way to word that. And this is the beginning feedback that it gave me based on just scouring that data. A little bit more here. Apparently the new Club Suite business class is getting positive marks. So whoever is managing the Club Suite, definitely give them a bonus. They need some type of praise, no question. But what was interesting is beyond kind of general things, I was actually then very immediately able to dive down and ask this question: are there particular flights that stand out as either positive or negative service? And you can see in just milliseconds, it's actually giving me particular positive flights and the reason why they're positive, and then negative flights and also the reasons why those flights are negative. So just kind of rapid insight here. So apparently you do not want to fly from Heathrow to Cairo for the reasons noted on my slide. So again, imagine getting answers to 30,000 rows in seconds. That's possible now, okay? The reason I wanted to show you this, well, for a number of reasons. Well, then I can take that data, and I guess I can ask for a drab kind of, one-page summary. And many of you have done this, I can be playful with it. So I said, write a comedic poem about the worst service experience by British Airways customers in the style of a Dr. Seuss book. And it titles it The Troubles Flying BA. Remember, this is a data-driven Dr. Seuss book. And I really like how it ends. Unless you like torture and dismay, do not book your flights with BA. And as if that's not enough, there's so much more we can do. Well, let's visualize that data. So I actually, with that exact same 2,000 rows of Excel data, I asked DALL-E, I said, visualize this Dr. Seuss story. And it gave me this image. I've been on some of those flights. It gave me that image too. But let's be clear, I'm at Babson, right? I'm not interested in problems. I'm interested in entrepreneurial opportunities. And so, actually, I'm sorry, before I get to that, I actually asked it to represent the voices of the feedback as facial expressions. So literally, I'm choosing the terrain the data is crossing. I'm saying map it onto facial expressions, and I can only imagine what it's like to be a flight attendant on some of these flights, right?
And Eric, all
So-
that data you loaded into it was text?
Exactly. Yep. And so where I was going with this is, I'm not just interested in problems, right? I'm interested in entrepreneurial opportunities. So what I did, and I'm jumping platforms here. I should have been clear. I was moving into was moving on to Chatty from Claude. Is I said, well, convert each of the passenger frustrations into entrepreneurial opportunities. So literally, like, turn the corner for me. Show the design and operations of a plane that maximizes customer happiness. And so I'm asking it again to visualize, to render. And so these are, and some of these are, you could even debate, are they desirable? I don't know, maybe I might panic if I saw a plane flying over my plane. It looks, more or less like a higher level of service. But some of these start to get interesting in terms of value propositions and maybe sought for experiences or what could create a benefit. I didn't ask for it, but it actually started to theme elements, kind of areas for innovation or places to explore. Again, didn't even ask for this, but it just started sort of suggesting kind of a problem-solving direction. And then also I plumbed that more deeply and started to think about kind of other ways to visualize this experience. One thing that I think was interesting is that so much of the flying experience isn't just in the plane. So much of our satisfaction comes from the pre-boarding experience of when we're waiting. So, I guess there's an entrepreneurial opportunity to get a hot tub, and you could see in the top center there, and so forth. Okay, so developing customer insights. I want to share one more thing with you very briefly, and then actually I do want us to go into a breakout. And so the thing I'm going to share with you just briefly is about idea generation and innovation. And most of you, I'm guessing, have used ChatGPT. How many of you have talked with ChatGPT? How many of you have talked with ChatGPT? Okay. If you haven't yet, I really encourage you to do it. You need ChatGPT Plus. I get a lot of work done walking my dog each week. And so this was a 90-second interaction or conversation I had with ChatGPT. I was trying to explain the benefits of ChatGPT for idea generation to individuals in fundraising or advancement at Babson, and I needed to move them along the education curve. So just very briefly, here's my conversation with Chatty. I just want to make sure. Can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear this?
Can you please explain the benefits of ChatGPT 4 to someone brainstorming new ideas?
Absolutely. ChatGPT can serve as a powerful brainstorming partner. First, it can offer a wide range of perspectives and information on a variety of topics, helping to broaden your creative scope. Second, it can quickly generate ideas or suggest alternative angles that you might not have considered, acting as a sort of idea multiplier. Third, it can help you rapidly validate or challenge your own thoughts by providing data or evidence. Overall, it's like having an incredibly knowledgeable and infinitely patient collaborator at your fingertips. Would you like to dive deeper into any of these benefits?
Yes, all of them.
Certainly. Let's dive in. 1. Broad range of perspectives. ChatGPT can draw from a large database of information, helping you explore topics from multiple angles. This breadth can enrich your brainstorming by adding dimensions you might not have considered. 2. Idea multiplier. Because it can quickly generate a lot of suggestions, ChatGPT can exponentially increase the pool of ideas you're working with. It can help you break out of cognitive loops or assumptions that might be limiting your creativity. 3. Rapid validation. The model can provide quick insights into the feasibility of an idea based on existing knowledge. It can point you to relevant case studies, historical examples, or statistical data that either support or challenge your thinking.
Yeah, so that's it. And so I actually share this audio clip with colleagues when they tell me that AI is just about cheating or plagiarism. right? It definitely kind of moves the football. So what I want to do now is
Can you please explain
oh boy.
the benefit?
Okay. So what I want to do now is actually I want to get us into breakout. And I think Danielle, I think we're going to be okay for time. And I want us to actually do an exercise focused on industry foresight and basically innovation leadership. What are the implications of AI for innovation leadership in the future? And so what we're going to do is we're actually going to put some prompts in the chat box and break you into a breakout group. And we basically almost have given you like 3 prompts that you can try one at a time and kind of put into a Claude or ChatGPT, and then go crazy. Put in your own prompts, but so like a little bit of a kit. And can we put can that be the Google Doc be put in the
I just
the
put
chat?
the Google Doc into the chat. So folks, click now, make sure you can open that on the first page. Eric, you're wanting to do the prompts from the first page, right? Breakout 1?
Exactly, just
Great.
the first
So
page.
that link should take you to a Google Doc. You should have access. There are prompts on the first page. And Eric, as folks are in breakouts, some may or may not have access to ChatGPT or Cloud. If someone in the breakout wants to screen share as you're putting the prompts in so folks can kind of see and discuss, does that make sense, Eric, if that's helpful to the group?
Exactly. We want one person in each group to screen share. So we want a shared experience around one platform, right? So you're seeing the same thing and you're talking about the same thing. And in terms of time, I would suggest that we do this for 8 minutes and then we come back and we talk about what we saw.
So you'll pick someone to share their screen with Cloud or ChatGPT. You'll play through those prompts, have some conversation, and we'll come back. Right, Eric?
Exactly.
Everybody clear? Everybody have access to the prompts? I'm sending you into breakouts. Off you go.
See you in 8.
Fadila, if you're still there, Mary, you should see a prompt. Mary Bollinger, are you seeing a prompt to go into your breakout? She looks frozen, so maybe she's...
It's frozen.
There she goes. Awesome. We
So-
can pause the recording here. Hold on.
Yeah. This may help to
Hey,
see
welcome
this
back,
week.
Alex. You jumped in early.
Jeez. He's like, I'm done.
I'm done.
You got tired of your group, Alex?
We can't hear you.
Yeah.
This mutes you automatically when you come back into the big room.
Sorry.
That's
Yeah,
okay.
I think I hit the, I followed the command, rejoin.
It
or something.
happens all the time. People say, like, when they see it, they just are like, oh, I know, it's telling me to do something. And they, off you go. Here they come. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. You got them all back.
All right. Hi, everybody. So how did that go? What came up?
Buddy is going to be a very good consultant.
We already knew that.
I know what came up for us is just audio that we were questioning how to, because you were able to have a conversation. We didn't see how we could do that on ChatGPT, so I didn't know. Yeah, we were saying we would ask you later. The audio portion of it.
That's with the app on the iPhone and possibly now with Android. I should have been clear about that. I didn't mean to send you into a parlor talking with ChatGPT.
I think also we just needed a little time to know how, for some of us, how to get into it. How did you just get into
Sure.
it to begin with? And Snow was great about showing us exactly how to do that.
So once you got in, right? I mean, I gave you a little bit of a cookbook, and then presumably the teams kind of ran in different directions. But what came up? Like particularly, what came up in the tail end of that interaction? Particularly anything to do differently today, based on things that kind of came out in that dialogue.
Well,
Data.
this is kind of basic, but one of the lists that we generated, we were saying, well, these, there's nothing surprising here, right? These are all things that we would have come up with ourselves. But the difference is that it did it in nanoseconds. And I could imagine the meetings that we would sit in for hours and hours to come up with that same list of like things that we should, ethical questions we should have about AI. And it's just there.
But just to follow up on that, Jane, so did you use prompt 2? Did you say, look out an additional 20 years? And it gave an answer and you said, look out an additional 20 years, look out an additional 20 years. Did you push the model hard? Like,
No,
I mean, one of
but
my,
we started asking our own questions.
Oh, okay.
We didn't have enough time to do that.
Okay, you're the team that didn't do the assignment. So
Yeah.
Eric,
Yeah.
you might find that as a constant for this group. It'll
yeah,
be
I know.
if anyone
This is what it's
followed
like
the
to work with
assignment.
innovators. I get it. You go your own way. So the teams that actually did the assignment, what came up?
Eric, we tried to push the system, and we got to a point where it just wouldn't give us the real answer we were looking for.
You had
the real answer.
Had an answer you were
It had to
looking
do
for?
with prediction.
Okay.
I want to.
Okay.
I
I
want
see
to
hands up.
acknowledge.
Matt?
Yeah, hands are up.
We sort of followed the instructions. We did the first prompt, and then we probed a little bit deeper on one of the things that came up, which was on collaboration between human and AI. And then we did the 20 years out, which looked like it took that part and went down that path 20 years out. We did it a couple of times. It had unique responses. And then we did the third prompt about what we should do now. And one of the interesting things that came out was suggestion number 20 was promote a human-centric approach, which was interesting. And so that was good. And then we also
Shooting itself in the foot.
Yes. And we were like, it's one AI winking to another saying, let's see if they buy this one. And then we also said, went off script and said, well, people report to their manager someday and their manager is an AI bot. And it had an interesting response from there. And then we said, basically summarize this conversation about collaboration as a metaphor. Can you do that? And it said, certainly. And it outlines how all of this is like a symphony. And it was amazing.
That was just one metaphor. There was a half a dozen or more
right
ways of explaining it.
Yeah. So my response in the chat coming back was, oh my God, like it was mind-blowing.
Thanks so much for sharing, David. Anybody else want to share what came up in their breakout?
Matt has.
Yeah, I was in Steve's group, and so I'll build on what he said. So we followed the prompts and kind of got off track about a minute in on the idea of it gave us some really good ideas. But if the question is leadership in innovation, how do you assess risk and likelihood, and how does AI help someone evaluate where to take risk? And so we tried to ask it to evaluate probability or predict or give us scenarios, and it could not do it. Every time we got, I'm sorry, I don't have access to that data. I don't do this. So that's where we felt like we reached the end of the road with it pretty quickly in terms of figuring out, is this data worth going off of or not? It was not willing or able to answer that question.
Thanks, Matt. It would have been a different ballgame if going back to the gentleman that talked about kind of insurance risk profiling, like if you were putting data into the model and having a data-driven conversation. Any other person would just want to share?
Mary, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I was in Matt and Steve's group, and it was a robust conversation. And I'm going to frame it a little differently. If AI's stock and trade is aggregating probabilities, then it, in quotes, ought to be pretty good at, in quotes, predicting a future. So Matt and I wondered whether or not it was at least as good at aggregating probabilities as some human beings in order to forecast a future, but perhaps had guardrails that said, I'm sorry, I can't go there.
Yeah, I mean, Mary, your question's over my head. I mean, but I do think at the very least, if we're talking about trying to peer as far down the road as possible in terms of market and technology trends, and as I think we all know, so much of innovation is process, right? I mean, I think you can tee up an AI to be a provocateur to a group process, right? To think more expansively or more combinatorially about different complicated trends, right? You can literally push data and kind of generate and spin scenarios. I have one of my colleagues, Gina Corelli O'Connor, who is arguably top 3 corporate innovation researcher in the world. She was working with a client where they identified 10 trends that they believe was absolutely central to the future of their company. And then actually they, and so if you taking 10 trends, just, I don't even know the math, right? It was 10 factorial or something. Just what are the combinatorial possibilities, even if you just isolate down to 10 trends. And so we've been having conversations about kind of ways to use an AI model to just sort of attack those combinatorially and also visually. So thank you so much for doing that exercise. It sounds like some teams got elements of what we were hoping for. Some teams didn't follow directions, which is fun, which is life. And some teams got kind of something in between. I want to make sure that I'm kind of keeping time. We've got about 5 minutes left. So I want to begin to kind of wrap this up. Okay. And so if you can just, let me share the screen with you. If we had a bit more time, I would have you do a second activity focused on organizational alignment, i.e. getting people on the same page in terms of entrepreneurial opportunities or growth engines. Pick your words. I'll provide the slides so that you can kind of do these on your own time once you're sipping a cup of tea and in your living room. But needless to say, there are many interesting possibilities where AI can be used again to explore scenarios, consider possibilities, chug through data, share creative visions of the future. Okay. I want to end, and this is really something Danielle just wanted me to speak to, so I'll address it, is I do want to end just briefly and touching on the generator at Babson College. And this is like a baby being born. This is not something that is like fully established. This is in process. And the generator, it's an interdisciplinary AI lab that we're launching at the college. It's myself and there are 5 other faculty, a faculty who's a theater professor, an IT professor, a strategy professor, a writing professor, and then an expert in prototyping. And we basically believe that the only correct approach to AI, particularly in an educational context, is like radically interdisciplinary. And as part of what we're doing is we're launching 9 specialty labs, we're calling them, that are under this umbrella. Though there are 6 of them, and actually there are 3 more of them. And the mission of the generator, it's to empower innovators from all fields to bring visionary ideas to life by harnessing AI capabilities. And so we're really interested in this as a really kind of pivotal technology for entrepreneurs and innovators to create new value propositions, to bring new innovations to the world, to address social problems very much inspired by the likes of Saul Kahn. And so we're just kind of pushing ahead, trying to not only kind of create this capability at Babson, but going back to my prior comments, honestly, in order to build AI community among the faculty and have faculty consider ways that AI is going to affect teaching and learning. And there are many kind of fascinating and interesting opportunities there. we're, I already mentioned it's interdisciplinary. So we're interested in everything from entrepreneurship, innovation management, design, art, communications, engineering. Kind of think about the multimodal, kind of multisensory scope that we've worked on together in just this past hour. You can't just artificially kind of take a narrow slice. You do have to try to kind of get your arms around the whole thing if you're going to proceed in any kind of functional way. And so I just wanted to kind of just briefly share that with you. And maybe if some of you are interested in learning about the lab downstream as we kind of build out our footprint, I would welcome that. That's all I have for you today. And I just want to thank Danielle and the AMI team again for letting me come play with you on a Thursday. It's a privilege.
Thank you, Eric. Amazing.
So
And
amazing.
you got a couple of hands up. I've been getting chats that it's amazing to have you here with us. How inspiring this has been. Mary, did you have a question?
Just a quick question. Eric, are you going to use the UN Sustainable Development Goals, the global goals, as part of your generator to see what we could do to really get on the best researched mess in the world?
Yeah, I already have colleagues that are using that as input in entrepreneurial discovery process. And so, again, combinatorial thinking, but yes, right? We sort of start with that as a platform and then we move ahead. So yes.
Thanks.
And Denise, did you have a question?
Yes, I did. So, this scares me, it excites me. I'm now teaching undergraduate students whom at a school where 70% are first gen. And all and I'm looking at how they quote use AI or ChatGPT. And my concern is that although this is amazing, exciting for those who can go to Babson or those who can be in the sort of real entrepreneurial innovative space, that in fact we may be leaving more people behind because there's a dependence now on using, grabbing stuff from the internet or a blog and thinking that in fact is real comments that you can actually use and put a paper together with. My concern is that we're not, we talk about how to integrate it into education. I think that the bigger issue is how do we prevent what we already have as a digital divide? How do we prevent that from widening, especially with the lack of knowledge of how to use this, the benefit of it. Whereas I see that students are getting more lazy in their thinking or their ability to do critical thinking or making connections between points. So, and kids like new things.
What are your any
just
thoughts
curious
there,
about
Erica? I'm sure as an educator as well, this concept of digital divide is coming up for you. Any thoughts there?
Yeah, I think those are all super reasonable concerns, and I share a number of those concerns. I will point out that I'm a bit of a techno optimist, right? And I think Sol Khan, right? Going back to I guess do you have to have access to a laptop? Right? And do you have to, is there a sort of minimal infrastructure that needs to be in place in order to kind of benefit? Well, sure. But I still think kind of the scaling potential of quality education I'm more hopeful than concerned. To your point about critical thinking, it's interesting. So the generator, the lab I'm launching, my team, we did a survey of undergraduate AI usage and attitudes. Because we felt like we just needed the best kind of data in order to kind of steer what we were doing. And it's really interesting. It's about I think 67% of undergraduates, we have 2,300, are one of their top concerns is a decline in people's critical thinking. They didn't say it was their critical thinking, but in people's critical thinking. And I can tell you, Buddy and Spencer, who were in my fall AI class, I mean, we had lots of debates, right, Spencer? We've had lots of kind of conversations about this. Is it making us smarter or is it making us dumber? I don't know, Spencer, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think it's helped with a lot of critical thinking. But in full transparency, I do know like 20% of the population who also just uses it to brainlessly BS their assignments. And not only is it hurting their grade, it's also making them learn a lot less on their own. So that is the reality of it. I think it's just teaching people how valuable it can be when you do leverage it for your own education.
I think what you just said is so important, because I think when you tell students not to cheat, it's one thing, but when you explain as someone who cares about them that it's a slippery slope, that you cheat once, but especially in mathematics, it's accumulative, right? So the more you cheat, it's terrible for you, and all the reasons why it's terrible for you in the long haul. And I think when you really when you really explain what you just said to students, it's maybe a temporal fix, Spencer, but I think I could see students being afraid of it too, using it too much, being dependent upon it, right? Knowing it's not
So,
good for the long.
so folks, I know we could keep chatting for a long time as a community and with Eric. Eric, I just want to express so much gratitude to you for preparing this session uniquely for us, engaging our community in this conversation of innovators, applying this so directly to the world that matters so much to us and our work. We appreciate you. Thank you. It was a great, great session. And
Eric, can I say something, please? It's
yes.
been almost 20 years since we've been together.
Hi, Stan.
Hey, congratulations, Dr. No Yes.
I love it. I love it.
My dad and I used to always joke, we'd say he's such a contradiction.
Story of my life. Story of my life.
Oh, yes, it is wonderful to be with you all. It was great to have this time together. Keep the BBWIs coming. February 22nd should be on your calendar. That's our next virtual session. April 10th through 12th, Las Vegas, A Dream in the Desert. Make sure it's on your calendar. We're going to pop into the chat now with the link for the survey where you can share your reflections and learnings. We'll publish the chat log, the learnings. Eric, did I hear you say you'd be willing to share the deck with the group?
Sure, I'll get that to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Awesome. Awesome. And for those who want to stay for the hospitality suite, be our guest. We will continue a fun and reflective dialogue here. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Danielle.
Danielle, thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you
Danielle.
very
Bye.
much.
Thank you.
Hold on, Danielle.
I'll be right back.
No one's leaving. Good.
Hello. Nice to see everyone. How's it going?
Well, Stan, what do we say about every AMI?
This is the best damn AM I've ever been to. Wow. It really pushed us. Danielle, thank you. Really pushed us.
You were the one who had the idea to invite Eric, Dad.
That was a couple of years ago, wasn't it? Yeah.
No, was it you said it about, I don't know, I've been working on getting it. It's hard to get on his calendar. So I had hoped he could join us in Vegas. He's going to be on sabbatical in Italy, but we got him and it was great. It's good to see him. He's doing great.
He's good.
Are any schools, like high school or middle schools, teaching AI? Have anybody heard?
Matt,
Yeah.
you're shaking your head. Yes. Is that something you're aware of?
Yeah, I actually I toured a couple of high schools up in Massachusetts that were trying to integrate it into their curriculum. One was a VOTEC and one was a traditional. Both were public schools. But to the point about the digital divide, they were both schools that were in upper class areas that were very well funded, that had teacher and staff bandwidth to think about that kind of stuff. So it was interesting, but I think it also in turn just reinforces some of the other concerns that people brought up.
So, Matt, I'm interested. Why were you up in? What is your job now that brought you to do this?
Oh, so that is a really interesting question. So, I'm right now. I'm at National War College at Fort McNair here in DC. I have electives in the course, and the elective that I am in is called the American Studies program. So, at National War College, it's there's 200 of us, and all the service branches are represented, and then heavy contingent from Department of State, USAID, all the other federal organizations, and then there's 40 students from international allies and partners. And so American Studies is, there's a couple of us Americans that are in the program with all the international students to learn America, as Colin Powell put it, warts and all. And so that trip was part of we went up to Boston and some local schools to look at how one part of the country emphasizes education and how local community involvement influences that. And then half the group went to New Orleans and half the group went to a place called Ripley, Tennessee, to see a very other end of the spectrum, a very different kind of cultural priority, different views on what education should be and how it should be resourced and that kind of thing. So yeah, definitely not what I thought when I showed up at National War College that I would be doing, was touring a high school, but it was great. It was excellent.
I think it should be noticed for Babson and for Pratt to think about this in their curriculum as well.
Yeah, I think we are thinking about that. Standing in New York, the Board of Education first banned GPT and then quickly sort of, tracked back and said, maybe that won't actually work. I don't know exactly what their policy is now, but we're a school of art, design, architecture, creative thinking. And so new technologies don't frighten us. So our policy about the use of this right now is so loose that it allows all of the professors to be about as frustrated as they possibly can with what Spencer talked about, but also to learn by doing, which is what creative people do. So, we're only going to know by going. So we are looking at it, and it is looking at us.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that we discuss in class when we introduce this is that how we can generate better and better and better prompts, and for our capstone research, for our research and innovation in general. And maybe this is a project that AMI and Pratt and Bobson that we can do together, that it is the interaction of a diversified group coming together, keep asking a question.
Right.
And the result is a list of inquiries that enable the whole community to generate better inquiries together.
I love that. Snow, it reminds me, I don't know if you had already left. I know you had to leave Greensboro early, but our opening reception, the prompt was around living into the questions and how it's more important the questions we're framing than the answers. And so really deeply exploring and living into the questions. And you're reminding me of the importance of an interdisciplinary approach to framing questions. It's neat to think about.
Volunteers.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. And also, we had a speaker come in from Harvard. Unfortunately, his session was very poorly attended, but he was talking about moving beyond the prompt, which is essentially an engineering idea, into a conversation. I can't remember exactly what word he used, but he thought, it's not, we're treating, this artificial intelligence in the same way you certainly wouldn't treat your dog, but you might treat your kitchen appliance. And he thinks we need to move into a more collaborative space rather than prompting it to do something. So I'm just throwing that idea out there because I think that, it was an interesting conversation.
Yeah.
All right. It's interesting you say that because a prompt is very similar to search terms, right?
Yeah.
It's different. So we're using the same reasoning to generate ideas that when we're trying to think of more inclusive and collaborative and broader ideas, but we're still down to the same methodology, just in a different space.
Mm.
Yeah, Mary, this is very interesting what you said about the conversation, because I always ask, hello, thank you, please, and so on. And people say, you're stupid, it's just a machine, you just put that, but I just cannot, So I start like that. And I was sharing in the breakout rooms that at one point, Claude AI did a great job, and I answered in French, merci, just answered right away, which blew me away. And I almost answered back saying, oh, have you ever been to France and where? And I was like, seriously, I was getting into it. I was just like,
oh, Fabienne. Hey, Spencer, I see your hand raised, and both Spencer and is it Fadila? I want to make sure I'm pronouncing your name correctly.
Yeah, but I wasn't raising my hand.
No, I know you weren't. I just wanted to acknowledge both of you for sticking around as students who joined us today. We're so glad that you're here, and please chime in as you have thoughts and ideas. Spencer.
Yeah, I was just gonna say on that topic of I guess how you interact with each model. I think that's gonna change a lot as we go on. Something I talked about within one of the breakout rooms that I thought was really interesting and is going to affect a lot of how things work in the future is how direct we can get from an idea to tangibility within the model. And one of the biggest advancements has been scientists being able to optimize algorithms that can read your fMRI data, which is essentially just how the blood flows between parts of your brain. And it can therefore figure out what neurons are activating and what thoughts you're having, what pixels you're imagining. And so that really goes beyond natural language processing. It's a whole new sphere where essentially models will know exactly what you're thinking, whether that's in English language or whether it's in an image form or numbers or whatever it is. There's going to be a lot of completely mind-blowing mediums of thought beyond just language. So yeah, I think once somebody commercializes some sort of brain cap that can read that blood flow, we're going to be in for a whole new consciousness, I think.
Spencer, can I ask you a question about your studies at Babson? When you're investigating AI, are you also looking at the energy usage of it as a search engine, essentially? Because not how much, it takes to make the program and not where the materials come from. But I'm reading stuff that says that, essentially the more we get used to this chatty, the more we have conversations with her or him or it, the more we're going to put ourselves out of business as a planet because the energy usage is amazing. Have you looked into that at Babson? Is that part of your generator lab thinking?
I mean, the generator lab itself is a bit smaller in scale, but me personally, I do worry a lot about that. Obviously, I care a lot about fusion and superconductors and things like that. And one of the biggest projects I've been following with that is Guru Wireless. They actually, their main value proposition is this new technology that it's a highly scalable, highly affordable chip technology that absorbs solar energy. And they've made it such that they can send paneling that's super lightweight and set up solar farms next to the sun, which is actually a concept that Isaac Asimov dreamed up almost 2 centuries ago. And now that they can send microwaves of energy at a 90% retention rate, that means that we could essentially get 20 times the energy we could on Earth and send it back to Earth. And they've already completed their first successful transmission of energy into orbit and then back to Earth. And I think that means wireless power transfer everywhere, and it's scalable. They can power drones already. So I hope that is kind of where the future is going. And one of my big plans is kind of building massive projects for the UN and stuff. Obviously getting money towards that so that we can not burn down our own planet. But yeah, hopefully that'll give us enough energy. And MIT has also just released, some researchers just released a new type of computing chip that actually emits almost no heat and uses far less energy. It's something like 200 times more efficient than any computing chip. So that'll also help with that.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
Yeah,
Spencer, you
it's
mentioned a
interesting.
couple of things I didn't have awareness of. Can you pop into the chat links about the harvesting the energy close to the sun
Yeah,
and the
can do that.
more efficient chips? Really interesting. Thank you.
Oh, thing. I don't know if I'm even on the right train of thought with this, but I think the thing with me, for me, that I think Jane said something in the large group that I thought about that was interesting. It was like, with enough time, like what I'm seeing, and the way that and I think a lot of us are using it, which I think is so interesting. I think like average people are using it the way they use Google, which was like such a mind-blowing thing 20 years ago that I could say, when does Target close? And I didn't have to call Target. It was amazing. Still asking that on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
And that if you put us in you put us in a room, that a lot of the things, like I ask it to come up with scenarios for some geopolitical issue happening, and it comes up with scenarios because it's like pulling from hundreds of people who've written about it, thought about it. Other people are asking the same questions. It's like we're asking the same. We're like, I wonder, I guess to some degree, I think Matt was talking about in his group, right? Like you get to a point where it's like, can you predict? And it's like, no, because y'all can't.
Right.
So they're like, I can't.
Right.
Of course I can't predict. You can't. So how can I?
Right.
That's why we want it to, because we're terrible at it.
Yeah, exactly. Can you help me? Yeah, and I feel like I want my like existential question is like, I am of the belief that what education does, for instance, is it like replicates the society that we're in, right? It's like we're continuously replicating ourselves, and we get a little bit better. We get we get a little bit different. We get more, but we're replicating it over and over and over again. And so it's like, are we actually like, by asking it to like be creative and whatnot, we're actually like,
and we're doing.
Hold on, I'm gonna mute folks.
Sorry.
Like, are we actually like I don't know, like looking at the cool, like, ooh, this is cool, but it's actually just reflecting us back to ourselves while, major corporations just make money off of us and we go like sailing into the sun, right? Like it's not really like it's helping, right? You know what I mean? That's why I've been talking a lot, because I'm like, I don't want to be like that guy in the in the session that's like not scared. Like, I don't know, sometimes I get really like freaked out, and I'm not kind of like, but actually, what is it really doing? I appreciate that it can help me do something in like the snap of a finger, and like the stuff that we were doing, like putting those prompts in and getting like 10 items back. That's like, whoa, that's really cool. But I know that there's more like with generative AI, whatnot. So it's not like just like a fucking like, dinner party trick, So I know there's more to it than that. But that's where my like, and I think about some of it. I know this is my last thing. That's my last thing I'll say about it right now. Is like, there are things that I know a lot of people talk about the flaws and stuff of it, which are very interesting. I was listening to this really, really, really interesting episode of like something on, I think it was Code Switch on NPR. I'll see if I can find it and drop it in the chat. But it was fascinating. It was saying things like the whatever platform it was using, when asked to draw a Black doctor attending to white patients, to white children, it couldn't create the image. Like it could create an image of a Black doctor, it could create an image of white children, but it couldn't create an image of a Black doctor attending to white children. But it could do the reverse. And I'm not saying, I know I'm the Black guy on the call, so I'm not saying it because that. I'm saying it because I'm not saying it because that. I'm saying that it is producing what we have given it.
Exactly.
And so it's reproducing us, and it's not just reproducing the great things about us.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think
biases.
Yeah, and I think the things that get missing is like, how does it solve for something that we haven't been able to solve for?
Yeah.
And
I
so
think that's a great point.
That's
I think though
what I
it,
go to.
it is a great and important and I would say urgent point, Michael. And I just wonder about the language though. I mean, what is it doing is what we're doing, which is essentially what you're saying. So Steve Hammond nailed it. Thank you, Steve. That was so beautifully put in the chat that, I just re-put it in there. All it's doing is aggregating probabilities or noticing patterns and maybe making a few connections that we don't. So it's the people who are putting the data into the machine that are aggregating those particular probabilities. That's why I think citizen activism is really important here. How do we add our point of view into the data feed systems, rather than just thinking that somebody out there is programming our reality for us? Because hopefully that won't be true. But I do know, I was saying in our group that, this is going to be a major contributor to GDP. So all of the big monsters are going to be on it for sure, creating whatever version of reality they have. And what does citizen activism in the world of AI look like without necessarily being about regulations? It has to do with programming. So
good ethics.
It makes me think about the role of imagination too. Like, just what Michael was saying is like, can a program that's based on information that people have already entered, can it function like an imagination? I don't know.
It's got built-in inherent bias.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
I
just
ran into
remember,
that
it's
already.
It's
I already
standard
ran into that.
pre-trained, right? So it's based on what has been put in. And if more of particular opinions and statements and ideas are entered into this realm, that's what's it's going to cull that information. And if it sees based on percentage of how much is there, it's going to generate more from what has already been in there pre-trained versus less of another opinion. I mean, think about, let's say if Fox went out and said, hey, let's just, some statement about something kind of absurd and respond here. The more times and the more people, then like the next time you do that search on Google, that's the first one up. It works the same way. And so, Mary, your point about our voice and activism is urgent, because otherwise that's what's going to be continued to be generated for either students to read, to use for their papers, or for people who are searching for information. They're going to get one opinion that may or may not be inclusive. And that's why I mentioned it, Michael, because I know your work in communities and I know how important it is and how good you are at it. I think this is an engagement issue, but if we engage around handcuffs and regulations and, oh, woe is me, that's one way of doing it. If we engage around, oh, these are opportunities for, in quotes, marginalized communities, that's another way of doing it. And the third way of doing it, we're all in it together. We don't see the world differently. We do see the world, most of us. So how are our various communities creating feeding streams for this data? I had this conversation in my own world about, because we use the World Economic Forum models. And when I look at the World Economic Forum models, I get a lot of data. I don't happen to agree with the slant that data takes. So it becomes our responsibility to feed into, imagine it, World Economic Forum, our information and our ways of doing things, so that someone's going to pick up that feed too. There's always 4 million people to 400 soldiers. That's always the way it goes. So let's imagine that the people who are trying to program bias in, intentionally or otherwise, those are the 400. We're still the 4 million. But we tend to move into these categories of, oh, woe is me. They're the enemy. So just my takeaway.
Lots of hands popped up in this last exchange. Matt, what's on your mind?
No, I was gonna echo the kind of the citizen participant or activism part of this. We're, depending on who you talk to, we're 5 to 12 years before the singularity event. And so when we talk about that point, where we move from it's a parlor trick and it tells me whatever I programmed into it, before it becomes not only smarter than we are, but they start talking to each other. That's the point when we're going to have some really difficult conversations before, whether we want to or not, about what have we created, what norms or values did we imbue these systems with to start with. And so the thing I would offer to the group, which is not my own thought, it's just something that I've gotten from a few things over the past year, is from the citizen activist perspective, I think we could probably learn a lot of lessons from how we did and did not talk about nuclear weapons and nuclear energy when that started in the 40s and 50s. And now is probably the time to really push that to become an issue. And people are trying, but it's good people in big government organizations. And until it becomes a citizen issue, it will not get probably the justice that it requires in terms of depth of conversation on everything that you guys are talking about.
I'm sorry, Jennifer, I'm just going to jump in. Matt, when you get a chance, look, we have a new MAD, mutually assured destruction, to your point. Now it's related to AI, and I can't remember exactly what it means, but it's the same damn initials. So when do we start to do exactly what you're talking about? Sorry.
Jennifer, and then Denny, you had your hand up. Jennifer.
Yeah, I mean, I share a lot of Michael's concerns that he voiced. There was a lot of head nodding, and I guess this to me gets to an issue of trust. And if I'm forward looking, the question I'm asking is, what would it take for me to trust some of the output, like beyond low stakes things, writing, but what are the things that AI would need to demonstrate to me to be able to say, I could actually use this and have trust that A, it's been done right, and B, it is more representative, than the image that Eric showed of all the white male CEOs. So that's what I'm left just asking.
Denny, what were you thinking?
Oh, I don't know about its relevance here. I was kind of springboarding on what Mary McBride was saying in terms of, the input, the input into the system, is going to dictate, the outcome. And we have to be careful about that. We all know that, AI in terms of using it kind of like a search engine in a way is not going to spit out accurate, information. But there was an interesting, a couple of months ago, a noted jazz journalist did a little AI test that was kind of an eyebrow raiser, and he put in a simple question of, please generate. The question was something like, please generate commentary on what Wynton Marsalis thought of Miles Davis's Electric Period, right? And the first response that came back from ChatGPT was that Wynton thought that it was innovative and that Miles was moving the genre forward, and there was a lot of respect there. When in fact, everybody who knows about the tensions between Miles Davis and Wynton Marsalis knows that Wynton is a traditionalist, and he thought Miles sold out, and he was very much against that. So when the writer reframed the question and just added a little bit of information, he said, give me commentary on what Wynton Marsalis thinks about Miles Davis's Electric Period from the viewpoint of Stanley Crouch. And Stanley Crouch is a celebrated, jazz and cultural critic and historian of, largely Black music, and was, very much involved in the jazz community. And when the writer put it in that way, it spat out the right results. It basically said Wynton hated Miles's Electric Period, and in fact, there's documentation of stage confrontations between the two when Wynton was very young and up and coming, and Miles was still in his Electric Period, right? And it was a really interesting kind of way, for me, interesting to observe that, it didn't give the right answer. It didn't give the real answer. It didn't give the true answer the first time until there were, other parameters put around it. So I was just springboarding on Mary McBride's comment about that.
Be careful the garbage you put in.
Yeah. Denny, I think for those of us in the university system, and including Spencer, who has his hand up, and the participants from Pratt, there's a new kind of scholarship that needs to happen that very actively interrogates the quality of our information and the quality and who exactly is charged with inputting that information and how it is actually verified. And Jane, I'm speaking to you because you're also in this world. We can't sit back anymore and say, there's an index, get the right book, read this particular thing. And young people on this call, this is your future. You're going to have to take the place of scholars in the past that really verified embedded information and created it. And then we'll get the right story about our jazz musicians. Otherwise, we're going to get nonsense speak. Spencer?
Yeah. I actually kind of wanted to connect the two concepts. I know Matt brought up a little bit about the singularity idea. And I guess the first thing I'd do is debunk the claim that it's 5 to 12 years out. It's kind of already here. I'll be really honest. The whole thing with OpenAI, they're working on a project called QStar that realistically, once paired with Google's quantum computing, will be sentient, if not already, in the next 2 years. So I think that's more like 2 years on the horizon, not 12. So be ready for that. But as that connects to the multimodality of what we have right now, we have AI that can analyze the world around it with radiance fields and vision. I think the only way we could really reverse the bias that we inherently have ourselves would be to allow a sentient being with a very basic set of parameters to go around and find the inequities using just experience. Just send out 50 bots in different countries and have them say, view every living thing as or every living human as equally born, and set it some sort of parameters like that, similar to that focus on maybe equity of opportunity and things like that, and see what it can gather and where it sees gaps in our societies, and that will expose then our problems, and then we can solve our problems and then fix obviously what we're inputting into the models themselves. But I think the only way to do that is to find or create some sort of sentient being with no bias at all itself.
Well, Spencer, just back at you on that one. We have a couple of sentient beings out there called bears and penguins and, plants. And we haven't consulted them lately about any of these things. So maybe start there with the sentience around us and not just assume that only human beings and their little trinket toys actually have sentience. But kudos to you for imagining that something made out of metals that come from the earth that are mined by people actually has intelligence in it and is sentient. But you have to take that thought and expand it to the biosystems, buddy. If I may simply give you an assignment, because I can't avoid doing that. You're so smart, and those were so well put, those words, or I'll just give it out to the folks that I can actually have more influence on over this call. But yeah, yes to everything you said.
Hopefully we can, people are working on models to decode animal communication as well. So hopefully we can work that in.
Yeah, yeah.
The students, I don't raise my hand, but Danielle, just Spencer, does this, hearing yourself say these things, do you get, or hearing us speak this way, do you have any fear or any, like, how do you feel about these things that, worst case scenario, best case scenario? Obviously, you've thought a lot about this. What would you tell, what's your gut on these things when you hear us discuss?
I'd say pretty much every time that I leave Eric Noyes' class, I feel infinitely optimistic as well as infinitely doomed for humanity.
Ooh, wow.
I'd say equal amounts of both. It's really, we're probably at the highest risk point in history.
Well, we've always been there though, because the in-breath and the out-breath is exactly that. So soldier on, you don't know when that out-breath or that in-breath is going to come. That's the human condition, to be 50-50.
Yeah, fearing it. All we can do, I guess, is adapt and work through it, right? So
in a positive way.
Yeah.
What an amazing conversation.
Thanks for being honest. Thanks for being honest.
Thank you, Spencer.
What are we without authenticity?
Come back, Spencer.
Please.
To everyone who's here, again, just as we wind down our hospitality suite, I gaze to the right, and the sky here is blue with these beautiful streaks of pink, and it's just absolutely gorgeous. It's time for me to go visit my owls, because this is the time of night when they hunt. So my great horned owls down the street are awaiting my visit to go in action. it's just so lovely to be together with all of you, to think so deeply and broadly about this transformative wave of that's hitting us with AI, and to be able to think with you all about it has certainly expanded my horizons, as the sky is doing now, on what's possible. So thank you to everyone who's here. I want to particularly thank our students. Yes, please.
Students, it's been so
Daria,
good to have
please.
the students.
Daria has your hand up. Daria.
I just, before we all left, wanted to say thank you. I know I was kind of quiet during this last bit, but honestly, it was just because there were a lot of new and fascinating ideas, and I was just trying to like process everything. But this was a really engaging conversation, and I think a great way, like for me personally, to kind of like start thinking more about AI and kind of being more proactive with it. So thank you again for having us.
We're so pleased that you could be here. To everyone who's here, and the February session on the 22nd is being hosted by you all at Pratt, and we're really eager to be in another dialogue between our community and your community. So please be there, February 22nd. And then folks, please do have April 10th through 12th on your calendars, and come be with us in Las Vegas when we can be together in person again.
And Danielle, you know this is going to come. This would not be possible without your curatorial abilities, and maybe your dad influenced you a little bit a couple of years ago. Apparently you weren't listening, but this was really the best AMI session ever.
Thank you,
Happy
Danielle.
holidays, everybody.
Yeah.
Honestly, you know, Mary, I always tell people that I just feel like I'm surfing on everyone's energy. That's how I feel about AMI. It's so amazing. Happy holidays. So true. Happy holidays to everyone. I hope you get some restorative time.
Danielle, I just thought about you surfing with Jocelyn
Oh, yes, that's true too.
when you were pregnant.
That is true.
Oh boy.
Danielle, on that 50-50 positive negative note, you do know that owls hunt snakes, don't you? Because here's a secret. She's a real snake woman.
I am.
Yeah, murderous impulses.
I am. I've been researching great horned owls like crazy the last few days since these two characters showed up in my life. So yes.
I'll have to connect you with my husband, who's a birder.
I'm out there with the birders every morning. They have long telephoto lenses and binoculars, and it's fun. Well,
We'll
it's
have
so
fun.
good to be with everyone.
Yes.
Care.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Nice to meet Spencer and Daria, all the new
Adila as
people.
well. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
And as always, we cannot leave.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Dad.
Hey, she is wonderful, Danielle.
That was great, Danielle.